All right, we're live. Welcome everyone to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, the Bella Gamer, with my co-host Glue Boy.
Hello.
Isn't time has progressed? We've been doing this show for I think roughly 5 years, right? I'm actually
It's been
super curious.
it's been a long bit. Yeah, it's basically just how far down in the if there's a playlist or podcast thing for this.
No podcasting, sadly, but scrolling through all the live channel is not that difficult. We're already at 4+ years.
Because I know there's the part that is fun to track is when you moved, because you can tell.
Yeah.
Just basically,
Okay,
is there a
so
green screen?
The first Table Talk I have here is September 13th, 2021. So in just a month actually from now exactly, we'll have been doing this for 5 years.
That's crazy. I mean, like, it is just a really easy show to do for this, because it's just 2 hours on a Thursday.
Yeah, well, to be fair, what made me think about it is me doing the introduction and then introducing you as Glue Boy. And it's just like, man, I mean, there's weirder names on YouTube for sure, but it's just like, yes, me and my friend who's, you know, getting close to 30 called Glue Boy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's the it's the newer trend of usernames. I found the tracking of it, because newer usernames as time has gone on have switched from like, I'm gonna make this kind of long thing, or I'm gonna make like this very unique special thing, to I'm going to try to come up with a at least max like maybe 3-syllable random name to go with.
Yeah.
Because, man, the days of like adding a bunch of numbers at the end of your username,
right?
How dead is that?
Yeah.
I mean, because like the way I think of it is I mean, it's the two only streamers I care about and watch is like Germa985 and like Northern Lion, because those are two I think very like classic usernames. And then mine is just I can't think of another, and it's something I kind of picked up in middle school and then just never moved away from, because I was just like, I don't know, it works. And now, yeah, I'm halfway to 30, and also like halfway to 30k subs. Not halfway exactly, but
yeah, I was about to say it should be more than that now. It's
really funny. That's one bit that I think is funny. It's just I get little glimpses of it every once in a while. Is my username being thrown around casually online stuff for World of Darkness. It's just like, oh, there I am. Oh yeah, it is a little halfway. For some reason I thought I had like 22k.
Well, half from your last metric, because 15 is half of 30k.
Yeah, I didn't remember what my sub count was.
Yeah.
I've
been inching ever closer to 10k for like so long now. It just slowed down dramatically since being down. I just don't make content, which is, you know,
yeah,
it is what it is. I want to get back to it as soon as I can, but you know, for sanity's sake, I don't push myself to make content when I, you know, barely have any free time. So
no, yeah, I mean, it'll always at least intersect, because I think one of the only ways you can work with it is, one, I think on one hand, if you're the type of crazy person, like crazy person motivated at YouTube to literally do an all-nighter of taking care of child and still produce a video, if you have like a more complicated editing style, because some editing styles is just you can just record and then export.
Yeah,
like if you're pure unedited Let's Plays, that's easy as shit. But like anything else, you know, that takes a bit more effort and brain power. But like, unless it's like your job, like unless your full-time job can be YouTube, then that's where you can get like the healthier split.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know,
Which is
it's just,
another like Northern Lion bit, because I know that it's literally both of like him and his wife are both streamers who like stream full time. It's just from their style and their schedule. It's NL, he streams from like 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and he picks up his daughter after that, and then that's his wife's turn to stream.
yeah. Yeah, and it would be convenient to have, you know, two work from home parents so you can swap off as necessary. But, you know, it's a child takes a lot of attention, and
Yeah.
like my daughter especially, she lately cannot sleep like by herself. Normally put her to bed. She might wake up like in the middle of the night and need someone to come see her. But recently, she's down for like 45 minutes, and then if she notices she's alone, she wakes up. So
Yeah.
it's just like, there was a time I was gonna work on not video content, but for stuff for our Beast Tamer game, for the PDF we're gonna release. And I was like, all right, here, I'm gonna sit down and write some of the rules out and the lore out, and just kind of do a brief, you know. It's not going to be a super dense document, but I didn't have any chance because she woke up like 30 minutes after I started and was like, well, okay.
Yeah.
So
thankfully, I think that just the blessing of the style of the Beast Tamer game, and also the just the rule set of Legend of the Mist, it just doesn't need to be that expansive outside of the creature count that Booter came up with. Which is also sick, because like it's just a bunch of examples, and not like a compendium of these are the only creatures that exist. It's just like, do you need a stock beast either for your game or like throw on an enemy? Here you go.
Yeah, to be fair, we're also going to toss in the oracles we made for the beast types and the element types, and then there's five example beasts per species, so that's why there's so many.
Yeah, there's a lot of species, and then the elemental combos. It's a sick ass document, because I think it's a good showing of how versatile that system is. Like, I think because it's super easy to do what we're doing. That's the part that I always am like kind of blown away by.
Yeah, I mean, heck, I like the lithic protector you guys just ran into in the Crystal Cavern.
Yeah, it's a fun ass creature vibe.
Just
the idea of
it closes its eyes, becomes more petrified, more solid, and then it can sense malicious intent, is how it gets around the blindness that it invokes on itself. So
I think it's also it's a kind of creature I can believe exists, because that is just a thing animals do. They do like resource guard things. That's like, why are you guarding this?
Yeah. So it's pretty fun. So yeah, I guess a lot of this small talk is just like, oh man, we've been doing this for almost 5 years, which is insane.
It is. It is just genuinely sick and crazy, because this is the kind of show I don't imagine, because like it's just with anything at some point in our lives, who knows, it could be a few years from now, it could be fucking 30 years from now, where we're retired seniors, and just be like, maybe we wind down tabletop. But like, I don't see it happening anytime soon. It's not like this takes anything out of our day.
No, yeah, honestly, it's just also fun. Like I look forward to Table Talk just because, like, today's topic I think is gonna be really interesting, because tabletop has been doing some big moves in the last couple of years as far as like rule sets and everything. So talking about where to go next, I think, is a very interesting topic. And last week we had that interesting conversation about the like the do's and don'ts of like second editions and future editions for games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think that is just it's a good conversation to have, because I think the edition warring, or just generally edition talk, is really big in tabletop communities. I think it's really important to at least lay out what an addition is meant to be. So I'm glad it's something we talked about. I also agree with your takeaway at the end of that, is I don't know how much more we could like really take from it. Honestly, I also think it would be a good segment if you just cut that part out, and then like posted that as a like little TableTalk clip that's like, I don't know, 30 minutes long.
Yeah.
What
honestly,
is an addition?
It wouldn't be too bad. It's just time.
Oh yeah, like at most,
have.
yeah, at worst, you know, it could be like, it depends how much you want to condense of it. If you want it to just be a one long unedited clip, or if you want to like trim some of the side bits that aren't necessary to the combo.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I do it, I'd want to trim it down just a little bit, but I don't think it'd be too crazy. I think I could tell from the waveform, you know, most of the conversation, and just listening to it for 30 minutes.
Yeah. And I honestly, if anything too, I don't even think it'd be just like editing out any little gaps in between stuff. It would really just be, is there any parts where we pivot in a way that just doesn't help what the overall point is?
Yeah. And man, I'm looking at my channel now. It's been more than 6 months since I made my last video, which is, oh, so sad. So sad.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be, the only other reason I bring up the idea of like, unless you can do it full time, is, I mean, there's just down the line that is going to probably be me too.
Yeah.
There's going to be something. I know I'm fully already preparing that in November I might just have to take that month off. Because if my big intention is to move up there, that like I would probably not have much time for video stuff.
Yeah.
Just that it's a lot of work, and it's gonna be a lot of moving. Because I've been settled in my place for like 6 years, and it's a lot of shit I gotta clear out.
Yeah.
I just gotta make a big ass like a dump run and a Goodwill run. I just need to do that, and I just haven't been wanting to work out there because it's so fucking smoky. Your entire state's on fire, and also there's a fire like 40 minutes ish away from me.
Yeah.
So like now we're extra smoky again.
Yeah, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, tabletop has always been a really niche topic in general, and like, even if I had been working all this time, I would probably still only be looking at maybe 15K, maybe north of 15K, which, you know, subs, and like, you know, probably much the same amount of views, maybe more, I don't know. Honestly, the only thing that's really been killing me is Legend of the Mist coming out and not being like, I'm the Legend of the Mist guy.
Yeah.
Because I think the game is super special, and I think more and more people are going to start noticing it as time goes by. So
I certainly hope they do, because I would be incredibly sad if, which it seems like it's not, so that's good. I'd be very sad though if it turned out that Legend of the Mist wasn't like super financially viable, because I don't think the game deserves that.
Yeah, no, I think honestly the game is really easy to make stuff for, make content for. Like, they already have a bunch of content ready. The hardest part of their process is art, but they got a really good artist who's a really big fan of the game, so
that's good.
But yeah, well, now that I think a good segue, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, I guess, unless you have any news or anything you want to like just yap about before we get started.
Not like anything particular. I mean, it's largely anything else that I got in the side is just my normal YouTube content of just World of Darkness stuff. I put out my big Demon the Fallen video if people want to go watch that. We talked about it a lot last week, but now it is out. I think it is a pretty cool video. And it would be really funny if a niche I delivered was beating the bigger WOD creator, Burger Krieg, to the punch of certain splats. I think that would be really funny.
Yeah.
Because a lot of my engagement is people really excited that somebody made a video on this setting. And we'll see. We'll see if anything happens going forward. People are really throwing at me some in his community memes of book they are begging him to cover for years. So maybe I just do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting niche to take. A niche
So
of a niche of a
beating
niche.
one guy because my videos are shorter than his.
Yeah.
Because that's actually what it is. His videos are like hours long. Mine, the longest video I got maybe maybe like close to an hour. Usually it lands around like 40 if it's something long, but that's because I don't think you need to explain every little detail to teach somebody a game. It usually makes someone more confused.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess, today's topic. So tabletop in recent times has been going through some very fundamental changes. We've left now behind the D&D clone era, which, thank God.
Oh man.
That was like, a lot of people like to say that the mid 2010s is the tabletop renaissance, and I can agree and disagree with it, because it was the D&D era, right? It was the era where a lot of people were getting into tabletop more than ever before, right? But they were all playing D&D, like,
yeah,
almost exclusively.
Because largely the Renaissance occurred alongside like Critical Role getting pretty massive success, and then there's a handful of others. One other that people don't talk about pretty often, of all things, that I think contributed is a show called Harmon Quest with Dan Harmon.
Oh yeah, Harmon Quest.
Yeah, which it was fun.
Stranger Things definitely also super contributed to it, and also just like since the mid 2000s, we've been kind of entering nerd chic era, where nerd culture is kind of becoming the dominant culture in most of the world, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And it just accelerates more and more and more, so to the point where now we just have so many nerdy references in literally everything that comes out on TV. I mean, like, movies are all talking about comic book characters, comic book superheroes now.
Yeah.
So,
for, like, in a lot of instances, for better or for worse, because when you get the thing that's been working too, and I really hope we keep going down this route. It's been a fun thing I've noticed, and other fellow like film people have pointed out, is we're entering an era of authenticity selling. So there's a lot of situations right now where the things that are selling the most, like the last Star Wars movie thing, I think it was the Mandalorian movie, sold like shit. Nobody watched it. Meanwhile, the new Spider-Man movie absolutely exploded.
Yeah.
And largely, if you just look at the two of them next to each other, you can just tell that just they give more of a shit about like Spider-Man. But also, like, next to that is Obsession and Backrooms. And also all projects that very vocally were not utilizing AI in any way. Like, it's been, the audience pushback is like desperately clamoring for authenticity.
Yeah.
And some are giving it, others aren't. There are some facets of Hollywood stuff that I'm still not a fan of, that are incredibly embarrassed to be talking about nerdy stuff, because, like, I don't know, the people writing it are just from that era of being nerdy is a negative thing.
Yeah.
But then the younger crowd is moving into some larger creative roles, and it's paying off really well.
Yeah. So, while I can definitely say that the mid 2010s was effectively the biggest boom of tabletop, and probably the even still the current like biggest spike in concurrent players and everything like that. Like, I think after the 2010s into the 2020s, I guess early 2020s, we were still very much in that because of COVID and everything like that. But it definitely feels like it has simmered down quite a bit and has now like not fallen to like a great degree, but it definitely doesn't feel as hot of a topic as it used to be.
I think, quite honestly, my read of it at least is like the tabletop renaissance that occurred is less of like tabletop is now suddenly super popular, but more that it is now mainstream, that if you refer to something as D&D, people know what you're talking about. Like, it's awareness, and like that mass awareness that gained, and it's progressed to the point where I think nowadays we've moved away from the characterization that's plagued early TV of just, I need a easy shorthand way to signal that a character is a loser, that is like in high school, still a virgin, and like can help the characters with nerdy smart computer stuff. Oh, just mention they're a D&D player. Which, if you go back and watch any, like, the one that I still have burned in my mind because my sister watched it when I was getting into D&D is fucking Pretty Little Liars, which literally did that like multiple times. And like the character would say something totally pretty normal, and they'd be like, "Oh, you nerd." I was like, "This is crazy. What a wild show."
Yeah. Looking at Google Trends here, it's about what I said. Maybe push a little bit further forward, but so D&D as a general like searched term peaked in around 2020 was about when it peaked, and since then it's been having much higher spikes than it used to before about 2016ish when it was starting to really climb up. But it's now like getting to the levels about to where it was in the early 2010s. So, you know, like mostly the niche hobby though if you look up Dungeons and Dragons, like the game that people are looking into, it seems to have more leveled out since around 2022-ish, and it's keeping that at a much higher level. But I think a big part of that is Baldur's Gate and other media as well.
It's just like there's a lot of really I'm happy to see tabletop in general just become mainstream to where, I mean, there's it's really not surprising in the slightest, but something I mentioned before we even started streaming is that literally today Warframe they're dropping a special like week-long event where a bunch of the characters from like their 1999 update are running a D&D campaign that your character is taking part in, and they're literally playing it, essentially doing a Discord campaign. And I noticed, I'm like, these people actually understand what they're talking about, because the first thing I saw was he's like, yeah, I set up a bot in the computer, and then it's /R 1d20. And I was like, I know what bots you've used.
Yeah.
Like, that's the bots I've used. Also, to be fair, also this one character that's running it, whoever wrote the dialogue for him in like the little computer text chat stuff, both name dropped, I think, like they may have a parody name for D&D, Vampire the Masquerade, and Pathfinder that they talk about. So like they know they know what they're doing. But now they can do like an entire fucking like MMO update, a pretty big one that's just so D&D vibed, and with tabletop, they're not calling it D&D, but the fact that they can do that and feel secure enough that this is a worthwhile update for their large-ass game, I think is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. And when I look up TTRPGs or tabletop games as a topic, you can see a definitive climb starting around just before 2020. So I think it's really easy to say now that D&D definitely like was the ignition point, like the starting point for the tabletop trend. And since then, other TTRPGs in general have been kind of climbing. And so, like, Renaissance as a word, right? When we talk about Renaissance, I don't think I can call the D&D boom the tabletop Renaissance, because the Renaissance was like an era of artistic and scientific, like, discovery, and a lot of people doing a lot of different things, and like just a big expanse in culture and everything like that. And having like a monolith be defined as a Renaissance seems kind of wrong to me. So while I understand why people might say it's the TTRPG Renaissance, it's more like the D&D Renaissance that has now transitioned into the TTRPG Renaissance, because of recent years we have new TTRPGs that play very differently coming into the spotlight, and one of them being Daggerheart. And to be fair, Daggerheart is piggybacking super hard off of D&D because it's Critical Role, known for their D&D campaign. So they built up most of their core audience through D&D, and then are carrying the audience into Daggerheart. So we still owe a lot to D&D. I'm not saying D&D hasn't, done so much with the TTRPG field. If anything, it's like the 90% of why tabletop is even recognizable nowadays.
Yeah, it's something I'll say, like, and fully admit. But will I grumble it? Probably. But I'll still say it.
Yeah. But now we have Daggerheart, which plays very differently than D&D. Like, the similarities are so small in comparison because D&D is a dungeon crawler. It's a dungeon crawler game with role-playing elements, right? Like, that's how I'm starting to look at a lot of tabletop games, is they are a dungeon crawling game with role-playing elements, right? Where Daggerheart is much more leaning into that blend of narrative and mechanical aspects that make it a true, like, narrative game. It still has very gamey elements, but it's not designed around the dungeon crawl. You don't put your minis on the map and move around and do the board game aspect of it. And we're starting to see that more with some games, but we still have games like Drawsteel that's definitely leaning into that more high action board gamey version, right? Like what your characters can do as a board gaming element, as a dungeon crawling element in Drawsteel. Your characters get exponentially more power, not exponentially, but like they become more and more powerful over the course of a session, because that's how the rules work. You get resources quicker and quicker when you do more and more fights in a row. So it's more explosive. There's more cool things. The game gets crazier as you play through a session, which I think is really a cool idea. I think is really fun. But it definitely still leans more into that dungeon crawl kind of experience, right? Where most of the game's rules and everything are orientated around its combat mechanics.
Yeah,
And
like I think both games, honestly, the biggest similarities I think that they pull from, and I think it's a great thing to take the similarities of if you're going to copy. I think they just both are trying to copy different idealized versions of playing their games vibe-wise. Like, and I think that's a great thing, because the one bit, even though like the core book of Drawsteel I'm not super, in love with, the part I think is really dope that Drawsteel talks about is trying to hit that, like, you want to play a tabletop game so you can feel like Aragorn or Legolas and all that shit. And like, have you ever seen like Aragorn miss an orc with a sword?
Twice in a row.
Like, it's rare. It's rare though. Doesn't happen that much. Like, or there's like the fact that in those fight scenes, in all the cool ass action set pieces you see, oftentimes it's just like a flow of constant battle, and it hits, and I think it's a vibe people want to do. So trying to focus on like that vibe of a tabletop game is just a good avenue to go. In the same way of like, Daggerheart, I think, is trying to hit what a lot of people see as like, what do you think of when you talk about a D&D game and like the vibe of the D&D world? It's that's what it's trying to hit.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think that's very astute assessment of the two styles of game. Drawsteel is, okay, I want to make a game that feels fantasy, that feels epic, and that feels like my favorite parts of an action movie, or a fantasy action title, where the characters are doing really cool things. Because in Drawsteel, for instance, there's no missing. It's just how much effect you get to apply to the enemy, like a minor effect, moderate effect, or greater effect. More or less,
which I like that as a concept. I think it is a cool way to do it, simply because I don't see it being a thing of, oh man, our characters are so strong we could do anything, but more like that sounds like it's cutting at least a handful of combat rounds that could have existed if you could miss.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, missing has always been very misconstrued, because in concept it's not that you swing and you miss, it's you swing and the enemy blocks your attack or dodges or whatever. Like, it's the bit I've always been careful of doing when I was playing D&D, because like I was running it, because I always wanted that vibe that sure, you're in combat locked with a person, but it's not I swing and stand still. Like, it is an exchange of blows. Like, you guys, in between the 7 seconds of a turn, you aren't making 2 attacks. You guys are exchanging like blows constantly. And then the rolls that we're focusing on are when like the camera zooms in, and like that is the exchange that's notable. Like, something happened that allowed you to slip through. Your enemy was able to slip through,
things like that. Like those are the parts that like the camera is tracking everything, and then it swings to you because something's happening.
And Draw Steel, I think, addresses this in an interesting way by making everything you do effectively have some level of effect. It's just a lesser effect is a lesser effect, you know, a glancing blow type deal, where a greater effect is a lot more powerful. So I think it's an interesting way, and I think it translates better the experience than what D&D does, which missing just feels bad. When you miss both your attacks on your turn or whatever, or your one attack on your turn for D&D, it feels bad. It feels like you did nothing and that you had no impact in the story, which is,
I can't stand that.
Yeah.
It's in like Magic is even worse in that case, because the higher level combats you go down in D&D, the more you as a spellcaster need to shy away from everything being a saving throw, because enemies in higher level stuff just have insane saves. So there's just like realistic combats you're doing where you are achieving literally nothing.
Yeah.
Because like everything you need is a save. And so the reason people like Fireball isn't just because it does like a lot of damage in a big radius. It's that even if they, you know, succeed, they'll still take damage. So like it is like one of the least wasted spell slots you could do is on a Fireball.
Yeah.
A lot of the other spells are really like you waste a spell slot or you get your effect off and hope that it's a creature that can't just immediately get rid of a status effect.
Yeah. And then Daggerheart, kind of as Alex was saying earlier, they definitely were going like, what's the vibe, right? Many of the classes, many of the characters, they're their own blend of the different ideas, sure. But at the end of the day, when you make a character in that game, you get across the vibe. Like, their experiences are like their skills. They don't have skills, instead they have these experiences that they can use hope to apply to a scene to increase their likelihood of succeeding on a check. And that is an interesting way of doing it. It's not my favorite personally, but, you know, the whole point is the narrative, right? There's no skills aren't just like, oh, well, you know, a villager has just all these default skill level ranks because that's what you expect. It's like, no. But they might have an experience of like being a villager, and so they can apply that as a bonus to certain types of checks where the context is relevant. They still have a lot of pretty chunky mechanics. How their wound thresholds work. I love wound thresholds. I think that's one of the funnest things in games because it separates blows into something less granular. Because I'm going to be super honest, I've never been like, oh, I did 14 damage or I did 19 damage and been like, whoa. It's just like, I rolled kind of high this time, or oh, I rolled kind of low this time. It's never made me feel like the blow I dealt was that much more significant to what was happening. But with wound thresholds, when you hit an enemy and it hits a higher wound threshold and they lose that extra health pip, it feels like the blow you dealt was more significant in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, I think, a good way. It's reflective in how a lot of combats would be going in this type of world, because like a lot of fights you're doing your cool shit. Like you get somebody good and they start bleeding, they're gonna just have a harder time. And like there are blows that will be a bit more debilitating than others, that will like accumulate and mess with people. So it makes sense to do it that way than just raw health, because it's the joke everybody makes. Everyone makes the joke of like, well, any damage takes the health. So like, what if I just shot someone in the foot and they die instantly, like immediately? Yeah. Instead of like, oh yeah, I mean that's obviously like a wound threshold thing. They can just it irons out some mechanical to like the narrative disparate nature that can happen.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's, you know, like Alex said, it's very much taking different aspects of the D&D experience and kind of focusing their ideas on that. And I think that's a really smart thing to do, because people play these games just differently, right? So they're going to want different experiences. The hardcore gamers who are coming to win D&D by doing well in the dungeons and having badass characters, they're going to want to lean more towards something like Draw Steel, whereas the more roleplay kind of vibe-based players are definitely going to lean more towards Daggerheart. And I don't think necessarily D&D is the best middle ground between those 2 points, but if you're moving from D&D, then you could look at it that way. Because I'm someone who very much loves both elements, right? I love both the hardcore narrative and mechanical aspects, and I want a game to feel really good. I mean, one of the reasons why we were kind of leaning back into Anima at the beginning of the year, where we saw how that went, it was fine, but it just, like, we played a little bit of it and then had a bunch of time off. But it's a game that has so much vibe to all the mechanical aspects, and because you can make a character who can just like auto succeed certain types of checks, it can feel really good. And Anima just felt like a good middle ground to me, because even though it's a really, really dense and honestly not the best put together system, it feels like the kind of characters that come out of the system feel very narrative and mechanical at the same time.
One of the strengths that we've often mentioned about Anima, just like outside of TableTalk, just this is in our general group, a key selling point we talk about, Anima, when you're making a character and the way everything operates, kind of forces you to give a shit about what you're making. Like, what you will come out of it if you like take it seriously and run with, essentially, like, as we're all helping a new person make a character. The thing, the class system and the power system and how everything operates, no one is going to roll up to the table with something that is like the same. Everything is going to be unique in some aspect. So because of that, an Anima character, I think, is one of the best examples of a TTRPG where you roll up to a table with something that's truly you. Legend of the Mist does it, like, as another game I can point to, of just off the top of my head, that does it because of the tag-based context system being so open that the idea of two people rolling up to the table with the same shit is crazy, and like insane parallel thinking or plagiarism. But Anima kind of forces you to give a shit with how clearly passionate the game is, and there's some special energy when you can find that in a game. And it's notoriously, when the game has the sauce. What is the sauce? No one knows, but you know it when you see it.
Yeah, and like, what I'll give Anima is Anima, by far, of any TTRPG I've ever played, has one of the most interesting settings to jump into and get involved with.
I completely agree. It is such a good, like, actual setup for the GM to run with shit. It is really well done in that way.
I could almost give that title to World of Darkness, but unfortunately, all of its different settings don't blend together, and that's fine. But then you have to judge the setting effectively on each individual one.
Yeah, it depends how you run it. It's a revised edition is the most crossover-y edition, and to be honest, as everyone also points out, revised edition is the only general, like, entire WoD edition that operates smoothly if you make everything crossover. It is the only one that works, but it's because they had everything crossover so they could then work into the Apocalypse timeline. So, like, that was the intention. 20th doesn't... You have to just shrug at some parts, and 5th edition is non-existent. But, yeah, like, WoD is such an interesting beast. The only thing I will say for World of Darkness is, I think World of Darkness, the strength of its setting is also partially the strength of Anima. If you want to make a really good tabletop setting, you need to introduce questions, mysteries, and new evolving situations for your GM to pull from. Anima feels like a world on the cusp of something huge, and depending on which edition you are talking about for World of Darkness, it has something set up for, like, that to be also the case. In 5th edition, there's a few events that are, like, actively occurring, starting to occur, or like are on the very near horizon. And same with Werewolf. Hunter is just always going to be Hunter. It's just you kill the things, so there's not much crazy things to pull from. But World of Darkness does it, and that's just a strong suit. I think on an example that doesn't pull this off as strongly, I think Galarian is an interesting fantasy like kitchen sink setting. I think it has a lot of fun stuff going for it. But the biggest failure point of Galarian is while they were doing their big meta plot shit, the world feels really static. The whole like War of the Immortals thing that's going on is interesting, sure, but like it's the difference of a plotline feeling like it's there to introduce something new mechanically and introduce some new classes rather than I don't feel like Galarian's status quo is actively changing that much with like the death of a god. Even though that should be an insane thing. It's just how their release schedule is, I don't think hits it as strong. I think it would hit a lot stronger if they did Pathfinder 3rd edition, Gorm is dead. I think Gorm is the one who died. Which that'll be, I ask Cam when he gets back. If I think Gorm, the god of war, he's the one that died. But yeah, there's that element of settings I think are really important for the game you're running. There's just the reality that a lot of times most players are not going to give a shit about your setting. But if you want your setting to succeed more than just like, our world lore is super cool, our magic system's really cool, everything like that, the settings that have like stuck around and stayed and really like impacted something in people's minds are the ones that introduce a lot of plot threads for your players to deal with. I know Numenaria does this to a really interesting extent, since for Numenaria the whole vibe is it's so long in the future that it feels like the ending of just like the 9 great civilizations that occurred in this world that went from like full sci-fi bullshit, and like it's just kind of that endless collapse, and so it's always going to be some interesting discoveries you can do. And I think Shadowrun in Cyberpunk setting is very good. That one is executed fantastically. Not even through just video game. It's like Mike Pondsmith does a very good job at keeping intrigue in the setting.
Yeah, though what I'll say, and I don't know what you were necessarily speaking about since I just got back, but
mostly talking about the examples that are similar to what we're saying about Anima and like WoD, right, of why they work, and pointing out like Galarian, even though it had its War of the Immortals and Gorm died, question mark, I think he died.
He did.
Okay, he's the right one. Like it doesn't feel like Galarian's status quo changed.
No, not really. I mean, if you read the books, maybe, but like from a TTRPG perspective, not really.
Yeah, but like meanwhile, if a god died in like I think something, if that happened in it, granted, events like that literally did occur with the latest edition of Werewolf, because Werewolf 5e, spoiler alert, Gaia fucking died. The whole point of the Werewolf War was to save Gaia, and she died. And like it genuinely shook up how Werewolf operates. That it should impact like that. And then I pointed out Numenaria, Cyberpunk, and Shadowrun, I think also do similar things. Yeah. And as such, people, when you think of tabletop settings, those 3 are ones that can pop up in your head more often than some other games.
Yeah. Though what Anima I'll give is Anima has such a firm vibe, but also enough dynamic aspects to allow players to play a variety of campaigns. Like the mage and magic side of the Anima universe is its own thing in contrast to like Black Sun?
Going all in on Key.
Dark Sun?
All in on...
I'm getting confused with other terms. I think it's Black Sun.
I think it is Black Sun.
And some of the other like secret mercantile organizations that trade in like artifacts, and one of them being like producers of undead like weapons, right? Not even just like undead, but undead weapons. Manufactured creatures like that they airdrop into battle zones in metal coffins to release, which is just ridiculous.
If you want to run Black Sun accurately, they're fucking Umbrella. Like they're just Pretty Umbrella much. Corporation.
with a bit more of a fantasy twang to it. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, fantasy when it like sometimes because Animal also has like some more modern tech to it depending on where you are.
I mean, true, but a lot of like the crazy stuff they do is involving like Magitech levels of technology and stuff like that.
Like we literally, I say that too because we did when we were having Black Sun be a notable thing. It was very Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Because it just, that's the vibe. That Umbrella does that shit, and then they wonder why everything goes wrong. Because they're like, we built a giant scary zombie monsters, and it got free. Who would have thunk?
So, you know, like, Anima setting, I will still state to this day is probably the best TTRPG setting. Like, mostly designed for its own TTRPG. It's kind of become its own thing as well. That is just fun to explore, fun to experience, and set up in such a way that it's fun to run a game in as a GM, because there's so many ways that you can influence like how the world progresses, and you don't have to worry. Like, it's kind of one of the bad things that some TTRPGs do, where they keep releasing source books and then they expand their living world, right? But that invalidates some changes that some GMs make and everything. So Anima, in some ways, it's almost better that they didn't make more books, because same thing could have happened, but because they didn't, it's pretty open setting now for just like whatever you want to do. In the core Anima setting, you can just run your own world, and it feels really, really good. I mean, I did it, and one day maybe we'll actually continue with my setting. I
want to
definitely considering jumping back to that. Back to
if
Anima.
we do that, I'm going to retool my current boy, Dr. Hawthorne. I'm gonna retool him to be a bit more fantasy to fit the world. Which, if anything, is he's probably going to be less science and more esoteric based. Like, he's going to, because obviously there's not going to be celebrity scientist isn't a vibe. He's just going to be he's still going to be like the vibe I want for him, which is a fake wizard. He's a wizard in everything except he doesn't use magic.
Yeah.
That's just because I like him. I think his vibe is really interesting, and it sounds like thing I still always want to do with this game, this character, is I want to help introduce eldritch bullshit into it. Because that's his entire thing.
But yeah, so that way, I consider the anime universe to be kind of the more middle point between like Daggerheart and Drawsteel. Is just that it's a game that is still very crunchy, but it's not a dungeon crawler, because it doesn't really work with dungeon crawling mechanics. In fact, the game kind of breaks down when you put it on a grid.
Low levels, it can work.
Low levels, it can work.
It just, once you get to like I do this much knockback, it sends you a mile away.
Yeah.
Like, literally, the way we've gotten it to, the grid helps to track what is still viable targets and what is still in the zone, and like what is nearby, rather than I move 30 feet to go attack. Like, it's neat. That part I would argue is needed only because of how crazy it gets. It just, there's a necessity for tracking. But then it's just, let's use the battle map as like a Final Fantasy ass tracking the health and grid of things.
Yeah.
That is probably the most you should use it for. Or just to be like, and there's an environmental effect being added right now, it's happening here. It's just to track all the bullshit that's going on.
Yeah. But it's still a crunchy game. Most of the mechanics are still very heavily revolving around the combat systems. And some of its roleplay elements are still like very much a key aspect of it. The lore is so built into many of the aspects of the mechanics. Like, for instance, magic characters are being hunted by the Inquisition, who have these blades made from spilling the blood of demons. Sure, we'll answer that here in a second, Andy. And so, like, if you play a magic character, the setting is said you're disliked, hunted, and your enemy is significant. You know, being Inquisitors are incredibly powerful. It doesn't mean you can't play a magic caster. It doesn't mean playing a magic caster is utterly miserable, but it's just something that, like, narratively, should be considered for how your character acts and interacts. Like if you're just doing
It
magic
also,
in the center of a big city, that's a big no-no.
yeah, like an aspect that Anima tries to do with its setting, I think, is part of the setting is actively trying to also function as balance. Because
Yeah.
what is stopping the players from using the insane bullshit that they have to deal with every problem? Well, the fact that there are scarier things that are able to take you down.
Yeah.
There are two different groups if you're utilizing big magic shit that can put a stop to what you're doing.
Yeah, and if your key gets too crazy, a lot of the same stuff kind of comes up. So,
yeah, it's like a really interesting, like, arguably high fantasy hidden world, which isn't very common of a setup.
yeah. And so Andy Overkrill says, "Hey, sorry I haven't caught the whole stream, so you may have talked about this already. How do we feel about D&D 5e being the unofficial, yet default language of many modern TTRPGs?" And I'm happy to answer this question because I think it's somewhat relevant to like where is tabletop going now. Though I also say if you're catching us like midstream, rarely will backtrack just to answer your question. We may abbreviate if we're feeling generous, but we didn't address this. So how do we feel about it? I don't feel anything about it because it's... I feel like there's a lot of people out there who are frustrated with D&D overexposure, which I think is fair. But no other game or property could have done the same thing that D&D did, and D&D is still propping up the industry to this day, and will probably be doing so for a good long while. So to say I don't like D&D because I've seen too much D&D, or I think D&D is bad, I think is juvenile. And I think we have to understand that TTRPGs are a niche hobby, and amongst like gaming type hobbies, right? It takes more work than playing video games to play TTRPGs. You actually have to think, you have to be creative, you have to actually speak with your voice, and if you want to do it well, try to act in character. It's very exhausting, so I don't blame people who don't like to play it too often, because it is just a lot more than just like hopping onto Power World, for instance, and building bases with your friends. And
Yeah.
having D&D kind of be this overarching casual version of TTRPGs, I think is good, because the more identifiable and the more like people feel like they understand the hobby, the more they'll be willing to engage with the hobby. And having D&D kind of turn into multiversal slop, I think helps with that in a way. Because people can imagine being Spider-Man. They can imagine being a Jedi, for instance. So when you have a game system that's very easy to understand and very easy to kind of get into the action, and it doesn't take a lot of brain power to get into, that can ease the people who would get into the hobby into the deeper parts just by nature of, oh, I found this thing, but it feels like it's missing something. Let me look for something to fill that gap in me. To get more out of this experience. And that's why we're now kind of having a true TTRPG renaissance, with a bunch of people filtering down out of D&D because they're looking for more, and they're just tired of D&D being the same game it was over 10 years ago.
Yeah. And I feel pretty similar in that extent. Like, it's an analogy I've used a decent few times, and I just think it works here. Is like, I feel the same way about D&D being almost viewed as the default, the same way I would if my grandma called like an Xbox my Nintendo. Because to some extent, is she factually correct? No, not at all. But if like looking at it, what she is like, I know what a Nintendo is because Nintendo is video game. So at least they know what a video game is.
Yeah.
And they know that much. The information might not be correct or the way I'd prefer, but the knowledge is there, and the more ubiquitous that becomes, the easier a lot of other things you might want in the future become. So like, it is a necessity just to have a game that is that, because I also just have the view that the more people engage with the hobby, the better. So if it draws more people to play, maybe it draws people to play for a year and then they drop it completely. and I can at least respect a person giving something an honest try and then not enjoying it, or just falling out of it. I respect the attempt to try more than how much like the effect at the end of the day is. So like, I don't prefer D&D 5th edition, but like I don't hate the effect it has. I'm happy that we're not making a bunch of D&D clones though. That part's the one part I'm happy about.
Yeah. And I'll go on to say as well, as much as this isn't us hating on D&D, if I wanted to play something like D&D, I'd play Pathfinder, because it just feels like everything D&D did, but better.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it's D&D in a format that I find way more interesting.
But that's honestly an interesting point, right? Because that's from my perspective as someone who's very into tabletop and into like even playing harder, more complicated games, right? Because I think a lot of the Pathfinder community's problem with like saying, oh, but Pathfinder's just D&D but better, right, is their perspective is, I like looking into harder games. I like games that have more rules. Why would you want to play something that has less rules? And it's just because those people who like less rules might just be more like rules like leaning players, or they just like how accessible D&D is, and it lets them get to the thing they want to do, which is pretending to be silly little guys.
Yeah. So I think there's also extents of the way I believe people when they say that they don't prefer games like Pathfinder because like they feel limited with the more is written out, it feels like the less someone can do. Like that is a thing I've heard a good few times. When I hear that, one thing I think of is like, man, I hope you've had good GMs in your life, because like some of that feels like you've had a GM who is a real dickhead, like rules lawyer. But there's aspects of that where I see it in the person. What they're really wanting is a game where they feel like they can just roll up, have fun with their friends, and like not stress about, are we playing it correctly, rather than are we just having fun with the game. And that's the vibe people get when they're like, I can do anything with D&D. It's like, yeah, they don't have to stress about it, because the core rule of that game is roll D20, add a number. There's like not like there's many other extra effects you got to track.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. I wouldn't even say Pathfinder is that game. It's just for a person who's maybe only plays one thing, it would feel like that. Because then they see everything right now. It's like, that's a lot to deal with. Like a lot I gotta pay attention to.
Yeah. So let's talk about now where TTRPGs go from here, right? So we talked about Daggerheart earlier. We talked about Drawsteel. Those are two of the most common names that come up when people are talking about alternatives to D&D, right? But there's another game that has come out that has surprisingly been running up on Daggerheart's tail, not by like a significant amount, but more than any other competition. That it's surprising that it's performing so well despite being so like underrepresented, and that is Legend in the Mist, being a pure context-based TTRPG, but a context game where the context is turned into mechanics to the point where there's almost no situation where there's a narrative part of the game and the mechanical part of the game, because the two meet in the middle at every juncture due to the tag system and due to how the context of how tags work. So it's something that I think blends the idea of tabletop into a much better feeling game with the caveat that it requires a level of improvisation and like actual player buy-in to actually make it work and make it interesting. It's not a game that you look at stats and you just play the game and you can zone out, because context matters, and so you can add tags to a check to make you more likely to succeed based on your ability to pay attention and loosely logic your way through certain scenarios. And not everyone has that level of improv ability or aren't that adroit with their improv skills and are not as creative in using those kind of things, and they kind of just want buttons to press when they play their TTRPGs, which is fine. And that might seem infantilizing them, but it's more of like the best analogy I can make is having buttons to press to do a thing, because otherwise it's the difference between using a feat like double slice in Pathfinder and in this system needing to justify how you get the effects of double slice, right? It's like, do I either use the feat or do I have to narratively describe how the feat works every time I want to use it? One obviously sounds like it has more like effort than the other. And
yeah, like,
go ahead.
I also think there's a degree of it is just it also just people interface with games differently, like at the end of the day, where there are people who will, when they interface with a game, are they the type of person to maybe get like super drawn in, like using Skyrim as an example of another like almost as ubiquitous exchange if you're thinking of, let me think of a big open world RPG that I would also argue is not very deep but very beloved, is like, is someone playing Skyrim and they're joining the game and they're like, I want to play this. I want to play a real big, like, cool wizard guy. I want to do this thing. I want to do this quest. Maybe I'll ignore these quests. Or are they the person who's like, stealth archer is the best build. I'm going to play this. And they're there for, like, the gameplay exploration and just the vibe of it. Both people are going to have, like, a similar amount of fun. They're just having fun in a different way. And some games are better suited for, like, one player. Some are better suited for another.
Yeah. And with the mention of Legend in the Mist, this kind of brings forward, I feel like, the future of TTRPGs, right? We have the draw steel, which is, okay, let's make the gaming aspect of the dungeon crawl better. Let's make it more fun. Let's make the players feel like they're doing more and more, and that part is more exciting. And then, of course, you have the D&D aspect of, okay, we have a really, really fun game. Now we can role play around the game, right? The role play isn't quite as baked in, no matter what Matt Colville says. It's just mechanically, it doesn't integrate as much as other games can and do. And we get to be cool characters, and then we can role play around it, and that's the fun, right? Is I like this game because the game is fun, and then also I get to play my silly little guy on top of that. Then we have Daggerheart, which is, okay, let's make narrative more of a mechanical aspect while maintaining the vibe of D&D. So many of the same D&D faces that we see, like tieflings, for instance, or frog folk, you know, the ribbits, or the clanks, which is super funny because I don't think they would think of clanker, which would become a popular term after they designed it.
Yeah, like they honestly is the reason I picked it. When we were doing our session 0 for it, I was like, oh, Ratchet and Clank. I love those games. And then it's a Clank. That was a little robot guy, and then now it's like an AI slur, basically.
Yeah, robot slur. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is funny. I think it's funny.
Actually, which is actually funny because that's pulled from Star Wars. I like just remembered. That's in the Clone Wars. That is what like clones called the droids.
Yeah, I mean it's very easy. Like I don't think it takes a lot of creativity to name a robot slur like that.
No, it's real. I mean, hey, that's the George Lucas special. You look at it and you're like, it's fair. That's not like a hard reach to find, but yeah, it's there.
But he did it. You know, he did it.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so it's a game that has levels of complexity, but it removes the grid and instead makes the players kind of think in a more scene setting way. The combat mechanics work the same as the non-combat mechanics, so you're kind of breaking down that division between combat and non-combat scenarios. You still have some fun resource management, and you have this fun interplay where the GM gets more mechanics right to do things. They have more of a game to play themselves, and you have this aspect of the game that still feels like it has a little bit crunch, still matches the same vibe as D&D, but it definitely is about telling a story. And most of their mechanics, like not most of their mechanics, but a good number of like different class mechanics and everything are about you actively doing something, like giving another player a compliment and spending a hope or whatever to give that player hope in that scene, right? Something that demands a little bit of role play in order to get mechanical effect, but isn't like the core aspect of what makes the game the game. And then on the third front, we have the pure context-based TTRPG of of Legend in the Mist, where there's no division, but it's not your standard TTRPG. You don't have skill points, you don't have HP points. Everything is done through statuses. Everything is done through logicking your way through different contexts for different like statuses, and at the end of the day, just agreeing whether a tag is beneficial or not beneficial for a particular course of action. And I feel like tabletop is going to start moving in these three vectors at different rates, and who knows if there's going to be another game that's going to match what Daggerheart does without just blatantly ripping Daggerheart off. But I would like to see some Daggerheart ripoffs that just have a very different type of setting, for instance, a very different type of vibe that doesn't so much lean on the D&D side of things.
Yeah, true. Like, more interesting settings, just more things. I want more experimentation. It's just, man, you know, this is funny. I think a similar topic came up in my comments recently because someone pointed out in Redeeming the Fallen video that it's really weird that that with Lucifer, the character that exists in DC Comics, when he was time for him to get a TV show, he was a cop detective show. Like a fucking police procedural for Lucifer Morningstar, the ruler of hell. Mm-hmm. And looking at it, it's like, well, why is it that case? Why would they do that? It's because police procedurals sell really well. It's just, it actually is the most, one of the most profitable forms of television, and like the most successful television genre. So it's an easier sell than, say, let's make an adaptation of Paradise Lost. I think one is an easier sell than the other.
Yeah. In
the same way that like a stock kitchen sink fantasy setting just sells. It's the kind of thing of there's no extra work you need to do. It's just, I get it. Orcs, goblins, ghouls, demons, like it's just all the shit you can think of. There's an elf somewhere in the woods, there's a dwarf in a mountain. No extra thought is needed.
Yeah. Daggerheart, I think, has a lot of potential for branching out. Drawsteel, on the other hand, I feel like Drawsteel is just gonna make more Drawsteels. More, this is my high fantasy setting with my high fantasy classes doing these crazy, like, ever escalating abilities in combat and stuff. And I think that's fine. I have a hard time viewing that in any other type of genre because it almost demands a touch of magic to justify like the escalating ability that the characters can show through repeated combats and stuff like that. I'm sure someone could make something similar, but I feel like it's always going to feel weird or harder to justify the kind of ramping nature of the setting without magic.
Yeah, true.
I did see VODC is getting a new expansion soon.
That is neat. I've heard nothing but good things about WildSea.
I haven't played it with my players.
I've read through the PDF of it. It seems interesting enough.
Yeah, it's fun. It's just a weird setting, right? You live in a world where boats travel on trees rather than seas is kind of the biggest thing, and they got these weird races and everything like that.
I think WildSea has one of the coolest log lines I've seen, which for anyone who isn't aware of what a log line is, a log line is a thing for a movie, show, something, just a product, where in less than 2 sentences you can explain what the concept and the vibe of your thing is. And like for WildSea, it has a really easy log line that immediately gets you interested, because yeah, what the fuck, why are boats on trees? That's not where they go. But like the world it creates is interesting. Some of the mechanics I've seen are pretty cool. Like I understand why everyone, it's a PDF core book I walked away from understanding why a lot of people kept saying they loved it, which is a good feeling. I love it when that happens. Also, I'll be back in literally quick second. Dog must go outside.
I'm just kind of refreshing myself on the twist system. So twists are, yeah, chainsaw votes on trees. It's like, it's very interesting. twists are a thing where the player gets to interact with the setting that adds an element based on whenever they roll doubles, or in some other ways you can get twists to do something. So you got doubles on your check, you can add something to the scene, like the side of the boat crashes in as a branch from a like high rising tree smashes into the side of the ship as we're doing this high speed chase. Now that branch is part of the thing. Maybe their ship is now stuck because of this branch, and they can't move forward and escape the baddies because of this branch, or the baddies can't escape the player's ship, you know, where allies are on and try to catch up, that kind of stuff. It's definitely fun and interesting. It's definitely not the first game that has done player interventions when it comes to role play mechanics. So I can't say that the twist system specifically would be the root of this mechanic kind of jumping into other TTRPGs. And to be fair, the Powered by the Apocalypse has had similar types of things. I know Fabula Ultima also has like their Fabula point system that can do similar types of things as well. And I like Fabula Ultima's a little bit more because it's more of a resource expenditure rather than just like whenever you roll a double. Even though I think the double aspect adds a certain level of randomness to when the twists come in. And for people who really like it are also the kind of people who are very much into the improv, like creative thinking style of role playing, which, you know, me too. I think it's fun. I think it's just harder to integrate for many of the reasons why I think that Legend in the Mist is a game that's not going to necessarily grab as big a chunk of the pie as some of the other TTRPGs, because it just requires a certain level of creativity and effort that a lot of players in the scene aren't really looking for. Like, there's a lot of people who are hungry to be creative, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people who play TTRPGs want to do things to make their characters interesting, make their characters cooler or more awesome or funnier, you know. Like, I've ran public tabletop, mostly D&D, and the number one thing I could tell you is the players who are like super into the game, who want to add things to the scene and who really want to interact in the game, want to do so in a way that elevates their character in some form or fashion, either what they do, how they look, how they appear, all that kind of stuff. And twists are not designed to do that. Twists are like a sudden event in the setting happens that changes up the scene status quo, and now everyone has to interact with this implemented thing. We ran into a similar thing with Legend of the Five Rings, which has another system similar to this, where the players could add things to the scene, and so they made their lord this kind of pitiful man who's super self-absorbed and has 100 statues of himself in his briefing room. And well, that wasn't to elevate the players, that was to sink an NPC down for the players' amusement kind of thing. So it's just kind of more proof that these kind of systems are difficult to implement in a way that isn't going to just like make the scene harder to run for the GM, right? Because now the GM has to justify, oh shit, this chase, like I said, the twist for Wildsea of a branch kind of smashing into the hull of a ship and like rooting the ship down. The GM may not have been wanting to do something like that or had a particular course of action in mind, and that definitely makes the GM have to put in a lot more work to kind of make it work and be interesting. And similar to Legend of the Five Rings, I need to make this honorable general guy work despite 100 statues of himself in this briefing room, you know. Like,
everybody's got a weird little vice, but like, honestly, it's as much as I always will hail the Star Wars system that Legend of the Five Rings pulls from. It's just, I love the Star Wars system. I think it is better than what Five Rings does, because I think it toes a line that is way better of in Star Wars. That is not something you can really easily do. A lot of the effects you're pulling with the dice rolls are in the moment little things, Like there is just little examples that I've pulled from is having some good ass rolls, and then a shot might miss, but it hits a like an air duct, and now steam is blasting out to help obscure your path as you guys are running down a hallway. Like that is a really interesting immediate narrative explanation of I got 0 successes but 2 advantage. Meanwhile, another situation where we were in like a ship battle and like 2 dudes were on either side of us trying to board. And so what we did through some good rolls and in success and advantages is the piloting check was keep them on our side, try to get them equal distance, and then I ripped the order for the 2 gunners to just point forward and open fire with our Gatling lasers, and then I just hit the brake. So then we just like go careening past as they lay up the entire side of both ships with our guns, and it worked super well. Things like that. It's mechanically introduced better, but it does add extra work that, and understandably, makes the game less immediately appealing because it just takes more effort to play that game.
Yeah, and definitely like the Genesis system, its unique dice mechanic is really good again for people who really like to put in the extra effort. It's just now you have this dice system that has a more like granulated, okay, like what type of benefits, you know, boosts or I forget what some of the like
advantage, disadvantage, and then it's triumph and despair.
Yeah, triumph and despair, that one. Like triumph and whatever, like what these represent in the system. And it's I definitely think that these games moving forward have a very strong core for that. If anything, I like the contextual changing of the scene, but I think that lies more not with something like the twist system, which is just kind of like a quirk of the system and not really like a main aspect, but more for games like Genesis or like Legend in the Mist, where context means everything. Like in Legend in the Mist, players can spend power from their checks when they're doing detailed checks to add elements to the scene, and conversely, GMs can add interesting negative aspects to the characters based on particular failures at certain junctures, you know, to make the game more interesting. Because in Legend of the Mist, for instance, if I broke a character's leg by failing a check to jump somewhere, that's not something they can just rest off. They need to in some way address that in the setting for that to heal properly. Like harm, they can heal back, but a broken leg, they might need to go see a doctor, or they might need to have it set and splintered splinted for a while, you know, before the leg heals. And so you would have to be like, okay, so at this camp, you don't get to fix the broken leg at this camp, but the next camp, your leg will heal because like enough time has passed and you guys properly addressed it and stuff like that. So I definitely think these narrative context-based games are kind of their own pathway for tabletop moving forward. And like, there's definitely tons of room for blending between these 3 styles, you know, the hardcore mechanical D&D, you know, let's make combat and dungeon crawling really fun, to the more narrative vibe-based Daggerheart style, to the more context-based Genesis and Legend in the Mist style. And there's also, we can't forget as well, the OSR crew, the Shadow Dark, because a lot of people absolutely love Shadow Dark. And the reason why I haven't really mentioned Shadow Dark or the OSR up until this point, right, is because they're not moving forward. They're trying to reimagine how tabletop was back in like the 80s, right? So OSR is the whole point, the old school renaissance, right, is to bring maybe a new look or maybe a slightly cleaner experience to those old school style of games, where you have like Shadow Dark, for instance, where torches use real world time. So how you guys get through the dungeon, how far you get through the dungeon, is based on how efficient the players are at playing the game and getting through the dungeon, because you have an active timer, and when your torch goes out, things get bad really, really fast. And Shadow Dark is also another type of game where there's not like skills or anything, and a lot of it is, okay, I'm going down this dungeon hallway, let me get my 10-foot pole out and tap, you know, every 3 feet, every tile to make sure that we don't trigger a trap kind of thing, where a lot of people really like that. But unfortunately for this conversation, unfortunately for the people who like it, it's not progressive, right? It's not like further identifying what the hobby is and kind of expanding on it. It's just trying to hold on to the past triumphs of tabletop and playing a very specific version of tabletop from an era now long past, like 30 plus years now ago. And it's something that it might come back. It might. The funny thing about old school stuff is sometimes old school becomes a version of itself that was new. Like, for instance, like D&D 5e might become old school one day, right?
Which was a crazy thought.
It's a crazy thought, right? But it just happens. That's just how things are.
As things progress, like, honestly, there's strength in going back and finding what worked. But like the parts that become way more interesting is in the parts of the OSR stuff I'd be more interested in looking at is taking the older stuff and seeing what can be fixed. Because like there's one of the trends I've been thinking is really fun. I always love this when it happens in video games is like the fact that if you look at a bunch of our favorite games that have released in the past while, each person is like, oh yeah, I was inspired by 4th edition D&D. Because, like, 4E, from everything I've read, has some cool concepts in it. There's some, like, fun stuff that 4th edition does. Does it fully succeed? Not really. Like, not at everything. The overall totality of it isn't great. But it introduces some dope shit. And then people pull from it because they recognize those aspects of it and they want to bring it out. And, like, that I find way more interesting. Because it's an element I really love of fighting games too. Fighting games do the same thing, because a really good example is Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. That game is ass. I think it sucks so much ass, but its tag system is genuinely super sick, and then was implemented in some other games, the biggest example being the Power Rangers fighting game, which is really good.
Yeah, and so like again, that's why I didn't really bring OSR into this, because it's just like refining something. But these other categories I feel like are pushing tabletop in new directions, or at least directions that are not so popularly tread. So many TTRPGs get made that even for people who are big fans of the hobby, for instance, it's almost impossible to touch them all in a meaningful way. You kind of have to pick and choose, because playing TTRPGs takes time and effort. And even someone as plugged in as I am, like looking at the ENnies, like best game or like game of the year and best rules categories, and being like, what are even half these games, you know, is just the nature of a hobby like ours, where it's kind of like indie gaming in a way, except you don't have a good platform like Steam to really show it off to a large audience. So it's
still just the hope is that we could get, just even if it's just drive-through RPG getting a better UI. Just like I would just a good storefront I think is super needed going forward.
I agree. Yeah, if I had infinite money, right?
Yeah, I've just all you need to do is make a storefront /PDF library. Like, you do that, you make the UI really good, and you make discoverability really good. Also, one aspect of drive-through RPG that kind of sucks is how, man, I hate scrolling through like 2-page supplements for something.
Yeah.
When I just want to see like the games. Naturally, there's filters, but having everything be condensed and filtered through, having something be like, I'll check out the Vampire the Masquerade, and then here's all the edition books and PDFs, and it stores all of it, so you can actually like transfer it really easily. Yeah, that'd be really good. I think it's just something that'll help a lot of people.
Yeah. But I think it's really interesting, and like I wanted to take some time from today's stream to talk about like our own thoughts, wishes, you know, like what directions might tabletop go into, what would be some cool things to see in tabletop, and just to kind of like just to kind of have fun theorizing, because we're at a point now, right, where we have some big up-and-comers who are changing the status quo, Daggerheart, Drawsteel, Legend in the Mist, but they're going to be at some level or another below D&D, and there's still a lot of people out there trying to make money in TTRPGs, and so of course they're going to latch on to the biggest property to make the most profit. And I hope we start seeing, like, I really want to see more stuff with Daggerheart. I would love to see a version of the Cosmere stuff that's not trying to be a D&D clone, you know?
Yeah.
I just Brotherwise, I love you guys. I got to premiere, by the way, on Brotherwise channel for showing off Stormlight. Fun enough. And I wish I liked the game more. Like, I was very hopeful for the game, but upon actually touching it and playing it there's some parts I really liked, but it still felt like the D&D experience.
It's the game. There's a weird disparate nature of that, where, like, I don't think it should feel like a D&D game, but man, does it.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of the talent system. I do just still hold that it needs some expanding, because the way I think it's too limited in a way that just holds the game back, rather than keeping it simplistic. Like, it feels less of, let's make your characters pretty simple to interface and engage with the game, and instead, like, let's just make sure you can't have all these other fun toys. When I think there's no reason, there's plenty of toys to go around. Why aren't we, divvying it out better? Yeah. And that, like, there's those handful of critiques I got. One of the dice system being one of them.
Yeah. I mean, the dice system's fine. It's just bland.
It's just D20. That's the problem.
It's just like D20 add number.
Yeah, and, like, I like the idea of gamifying advantage. It doesn't hit it as well as I think it could.
The Graze mechanic is cool. I love the Graze mechanic.
That one's great. And also the expertise mechanic. They did good expertise.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there, and I would love to see more. I'm going to start off, right, because I'm going to just spill out all my ism here and talk about the things I'm super invested in and interested in. I want a Lord of the Mysteries style game, and I think the Legend in the Mist, the Mist engine specifically from Legend in the Mist, is the only way to make it work in any reasonable fashion. But more specifically, the Lord of the Mysteries setting in the world and everything like that, it's like, all right, occult mystery where you play as normal people from, like, the mid 1800s feel, right? And, like, new technologies are coming out, like, oh, someone just invented, like, the light bulb. That's cool, right? And we have steam-powered boats and steam-powered war machines and everything like that. But also, like, Jack the Ripper is actually, like, a cryptid that's running around and killing people. And stopping him is very hard because he's superhuman in more ways than one. And also killing him, you find out that he's actually connected to, like, an eldritch god. And that's just really fun. The sequences are really fun, and I've been playing a co-op game with a good friend of mine from our weekly games, Booter, and it's some of the best I've played in tabletop. And part of that is just because Legend of the Mist, I think, is probably my favorite TTRPG, and it's not even close. But in addition to that, for me specifically, Lord of the Mysteries is my ideal setting. It's not quite my ideal, but, like, so close that it's marginally different, because I want, like, a modern feeling fantasy that really integrates the weird supernatural aspects with the actual modern aspects. And while it is a little bit more secret world in a lot of ways, even in the books, it's kind of, that's falling away because things are just getting a little out of hand. And it's a game where, for instance, my character, I've invented my own sequence for the actor pathway. Sequence 7 potion is audience, which allows me to kind of view a particular target from this extra dimensional space, and it lets me spy on people in a way that's incredibly hard to detect. But I used it in our most recent session recently to get around this kind of policeman with supernatural hunting abilities, because I'd watch him, and as long as he wasn't aware of my presence in the scene, right, I could teleport around him using this power. Like, it's not a big range teleport, but it does give me some teleport-like abilities. And so we used it in a way to make him think that we just, like, bamped out to there. He found where we were hiding. He was looking around. He's like, shit, they teleported. Fuck. And he's now going back to get more help on this case because something is definitely going on. And it's super fun. And it was me using a power in a way that is mostly meant to be like a spying power, but using it in a way to trick someone instead, rather than just spying on them. And some of the sequences and pathways are really fun. Like the hunter pathway, I'm really starting to like more and more, because you get the ability to identify tracks super easily. But not only can you identify tracks easily, you can tell from the tracks, like the weight of the individual, whether they have a limp, typically what gender they are, if they're carrying like weapons or anything like that. The hunter guy that we were fighting, funny enough, he discovered something weird was going on because he was following the tracks of our wagon after we kind of left a checkpoint. And he noticed that the wagon got heavier because my character kind of like teleported onto the wagon at one point to talk to Booter's character, and then like jumped away. And so he saw that someone jumped on here, the wagon is now heavier, and then someone jumped off, and he started tracking me directly to the spot I was hiding in. And it became this really tense point where I had to jump into my space and observe him when he got in range before he realized I was there and identified me, because when he did, my power doesn't work anymore. I can't jump into the space if I'm known in the scene. And so this really tense moment of this guy coming up with his hunter senses. He can hear heartbeats. He can hear breathing. He can smell the general stink of a person from a pretty decent distance away. And so he had enough to know someone was there, but not exactly what was going on. And I barely to manage slip into the space before he found my hiding spot. But it was really fun. And it's this setting that's very much occult horror mixed with weird powers, mixed with investigations and mystery. And when combat does happen, which is rare, shit gets crazy, especially because artifacts, like every artifact in the setting is effectively a cursed item. It has good things, but also sometimes very bad things. And the powers that people can do, I mean, Booter's character, he's going from a guy who can hear really well and like is aware of supernatural things happening in his vicinity, to shadow aesthetic, which is his next sequence, where he just controls shadows and can make shadow monsters that might follow his commands or might eat him, who knows. And then after that, he becomes a Rose Knight, which sounds really nice, except he becomes a Flesh Mage, is effectively what a Rose Knight is. And he can hide in people's bodies, and he can regenerate his body dramatically fast, especially if he has a fresh source of meat nearby.
Yeah, just a nice vibe.
Just it's after that he becomes a shepherd who's essentially a soul mage who can who can essentially graze on the souls of other Beyonders and gain access to their powers.
That is quite strong.
It's quite strong. To be fair, his sequence 9 and 8 are terrible. He's also currently, he saw the face of a god, and rather than dying immediately, which is a boon, he's slowly falling into an unending sleep. And we have to figure that out now, or he's just going to be like asleep forever.
As you do.
Yeah. But in his dreams, he hears eldritch whispers that he's using to digest his potion for listener, which has been really fun. He's found a couple of interesting. He discovered a ritual recently that allows him to summon a forgotten warrior from history, that past history, to act as a bodyguard for a person, place, or thing for a certain amount of time, and that's cool. So whenever we get the resources to do that, that'll be a fun thing to have access to. But
yeah, I mean, sounds like it.
but it's a lot. But if I have one dream right now on tabletop, is to run everyone through a Lord of the Mysteries game that we can play, because I think it's my favorite setting, and just having an Eldritch investigative story like that in one of the world's current like leading fantasy novels, mostly in China, but starting to come to the US a bit, would be really, really cool.
Yeah, like when you have like a setting like that, because even me, who's historically, oh man, this is the game I want to really run, actually GM, like I'll never really do it. At some point in the future, one of my actual desires is to, I would love to run a World of Darkness thing. I love that setting way too much, and I think that like I have a special love for that setting, that I think I could create a really interesting overall storyline and just the feel of WoD. Though, I'm thinking on it, for my own like desire and true dreams of tabletop, I think this is going to be really unsurprising to hear from me. But one of the things I would love to see going forward at tabletop isn't even like a specific game or specific thing. I just really want the economics to change so that it's just really cheap for people to make games. Because like that's with bringing up the Steam storefront vibe, but for tabletop games. I would love it if people, especially like even small dev teams, bigger dev teams, to just create something that's really them. Because I want interesting games that aren't set in places I'm familiar with. I would love people to experiment more with settings, with storylines, with character concepts, because like, especially after running through like a Demon Fallen video, a lot of my love for that system is genuinely the fact of when I'm reading it, I'm like, who the fuck is this for? Who, like, is this just the people creating it really gave a shit and like wanted this to exist and wanted to tell this thing? But like, I don't see the market value of doing this. And I want things like that. I like the idea of people creating games they're passionate about and not really caring as much about having it sell super well or having it work perfectly. Like, I don't want a game that is completely perfect. I want a game that when you read through it or even play it, you're like, I like that they gave a shit enough to do this really interesting idea. Because the more of those things we introduce to the like overall system that is tabletop, I think we can get really interesting ideas. The more we throw at the wall, we can find out what sticks and what interesting innovations can come up with throughout it. That is what I want to see of tabletop moving forward. I want it to be cheaper, and I would love people to have the freedom to create a bunch of shit that they find interesting.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I'm going to sound like the biggest Legend of the Mist fanboy here, but I think Legend of the Mist is one of the best games currently to do that kind of stuff. Because you don't have to rewrite mechanics or write mechanics at all for your, like, whatever new thing you bring to Legend of the Mist, right? Because, for instance, if you were to create, like, your own setting in D&D, well, then you need to have what each level a character gets, what abilities they get. They need to be in relation to combat or a grid or some type of check, right? You have to write it down. You have to write all that stuff down so people know what they get at these individual points. Legend in the Mist, though, is different because it's a context-based game, and besides providing some examples and maybe changing up how the engine works a little bit, which it doesn't even take that much effort, you can create whatever kind of setting with whatever kind of mechanics you want, and you don't have to provide that much actual like rule language in your document, because the engine just works super well. Like, you can make new themes and you can add improvements to those themes if you really want, but the current themes they have account for pretty much anything, like skill or trade or trait, you know. It's something that is really good. The Beast Tamer game that I've been making with my friend Booter, man, I've never seen a creature collecting, monster taming TTRPG work anywhere near as good as what we've been doing at all. And it honestly hasn't even been that much effort to do. And it's super fun because of the elements we introduced, because of the species we introduced, we made some roll tables and everything like that. The players are having lots of fun with the mechanics, and like I'm seeing the players do really creative and interesting things. Even in the last fight we did, my wife, her character, she has this creature that can create like mirror mazes by creating these pillars of reflective metal to confuse and disorientate enemies. And so she created this mirror maze for this fight, but whilst doing it, there's a mechanic that allowed her to block effectively a couple attacks from enemies at the same time that made a lot of sense. And it was cool. It was a cool moment. And the implications of the mirror maze, even though it didn't really get used, were going to be really interesting as well for the fight moving forward. And that's just because Legend of the Mist is so flexible, it's so easy. And now we have a beast taming TTRPG that feels really good. Doesn't feel like, all right, I send you out, Pikachu, and now I play as Pikachu in a D&D game, right? You know, funny enough, Lancer kind of could do the same thing, where it's just like, yes, your tamer doesn't get anything, right? But everything is on your creatures. And so when you fight with your creatures, they go onto the grid and they do their things, right? But Legend of the Mist, it feels like the tamer is a much bigger part of the equation. And because of the context of the game, I mean, what we did in this last session, I created a scene where the players were getting doubt whether they were going to actually get anything from their trip or not. And then they went up against some creatures that fed on that doubt and used that as a weapon. That's so cool. That doesn't happen in any other TTRPG, really, you know? Especially because if you did that in Pathfinder, if you got the frightened condition, right? One, it falls off naturally after like 6 seconds. But two, being frightened sucks. It's a very big like penalty to your stats. But the doubt status in Legend of the Mist only affects things where your doubt would be relevant, you know? So it wasn't a negative status that the players had to overly contend against, but was a status that the enemies could use against the players in a meaningful way. And so yeah, if more people wanted to make things, I think Legend of the Mist is the perfect game for it, because all you have to do is just tell people what your game is about, what your setting is like, and set expectations for how statuses and themes work, and then go from there. It's such an easy thing to do. Our Beast Tamer game is going to take, for the rules, probably less than 20 pages for the rule changes and some of the lore bits, and then the rest of our document is just a bunch of examples of creatures, and that's it.
Yeah, like it's real fun of how just easy and simple it is. Because I like the freedom of just how things work, which is pulling me in further as someone who I've just never given much of a shit of creature taming outside of Pokemon, but like that's just because I grew up with Pokemon. But for this, like, it's been really fun because I can have a bunch of weird esoteric power structures. Like I got an angel that alters your perception of time, and I have some pretty interesting shit I feel like I could be doing with that. Largely because the way I want to progress him is the idea of like having it not just be, your sense of time has been sped up or slowed down, but I really like the idea of you having that moment of I go and I do the thing, and then you realize like that was almost a projection of the simple impulse of this is what I'm gonna do, and the angel made you perceive that you went and did it. I think like having weird powers like that where you're just like, what the fuck just happened, is a real interesting part that I can tap into. Because I really like those powers. I like powers that make you like, that just fuck with you in weird ways, or you can use really versatile systems. It's why I'm so ready and hyped to whenever I can finally get enough promise together. I really want to add the power of just projected time alteration onto my main boy, onto Judas Priest. Because I think that, like, not even just, oh yeah, I can use this in really interesting combat mechanics. I think there are really interesting, tricky ways you could utilize it too, and some fun support ways you could use it. it's ever since I had the concept in my head of like, you are ready to run out and like go do a punch, and you're just gonna go like swing at a creature, and then time around you speeds up. So in your perspective, you just got faster, and now you're just like you zipped past because like it was happening mid action, and so like I didn't even reach that location yet, and now you've just whiffed a punch that can be like countered. I think the idea of that, or like little micro slowdowns and speed ups, is just such a weird, fun power set.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't alter your momentum, it alters where other people are positionally to you.
Or at least your perception of where they are to you.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends, because like, I like my new Angel Lateralis, which has also been fun of just I'm using the JoJo naming conventions. And that this will keep up, but like either having one be like shut down, be it just I can shut down an enemy in a way that's really helpful and supportive, also just deal with spirit shit as it comes up, and then the other one having like in a fight you are fighting, and then like the guy you're in a fist fight with, because he sped up his own sense of time and just how he sped up time, slowed down time, he suddenly like hit you 3 extra times like in quick succession, or you just completely whiffed because he fucked with how you flow in time. And another power that I want to create for Judas Priest, I really like the idea of a stutter in time, where it's just kind of like flicking the light switch of time, how you flow in time, so it's just really disorienting. It's like talking with a speech jammer is the way I picture it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like how fucked up that gets you to the idea that like your senses are just going against you. I think is a really interesting idea.
Yeah, and it'd be easy to do mechanically speaking. Like, it sounds super esoteric and weird, but mechanically speaking, it's just like, all right, Alex is doing this thing with this context in mind, and then he evokes on the creature like a confused status, and that's it. Yeah. You know, like, what happens in contextually is the creature feels all this stuff and feels kind of all out of place, but the end game is he's really fucking confused because he feels like he's doing things, but they haven't happened yet, or he's done a thing, but then it didn't happen in the way he thought, or someone was closer to him, but when they really weren't, kind of stuff. You know, it's just it's confused. You know, simple as that.
And then I mean, in the same lens, I still also like the idea of a power set that is healer, but the way their healing works is they rewind you in time.
Yeah.
So then you're just at a different state. It can undo some really big damage, but it has to be done at like there's a time frame that it has to be done in. That feels like a really fun trade-off, like mechanical trade-off for a power, instead of just, oh, I heal you, your health back, or I take away a wound. It's this can treat some big shit, but like there's a turn limit. Like if this happens in turn 1, I have to get rid. If I don't get rid of it by like turn 3, fuck, like I can't undo that. Like I like the idea of that.
Yeah, and it's so easy to recreate in the system, and that's why in Legend of the Mist we also have our Lord of the Mysteries game, because of that crazy stuff, like Booter eventually summoning shadow demons or becoming a flesh mage or swallowing people's souls, right? All sounds wild, but it's so easy to do in Legend of the Mist. It's not even, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about it at all, you know, because it's not a game where you can really exploit, because all you have to do is like say, can this work against this, yes or no, and that applies a +1 +2 based on the number of tags. You know, Judas Priest being able to confuse them, they're still going to have like the creature's mind and their senses might be able to counteract it somewhat. He has to create a somewhat significant effect through some other conjoining tags in order to be super effective against creatures. But you know, a lot of creatures won't necessarily have the ability to properly adjust to time shifting in such a way. So it's going to be effective against a large number of creatures, but there's also going to be a large number, not large, but a decent size of creatures who are going to be less affected by it because they have unique senses, abilities, or their own particular contexts that allow them to either adapt or even ignore some of these effects in some ways. Like, funny enough, the Lithic Protector that you guys are going up against, probably would be less affected by this ability because he closes his eyes all the time and only senses things through like intent. And so he won't have that visual like clutter of time, his perception of time being altered necessarily. To some degree, I don't think he'd counter it completely, but just not as much as a creature that, you know, visually sees.
No, yeah, like in that instance, the only thing I can think of is, honestly, in that instance, all I could think that would help is a spiritual slowdown, since it is a spirit creature that'd be doing this. The idea that, like, can Lateralis slow down almost the, like, intent part, like the transference of the intent that it reads, of just makes it so, like, it's harder for it to react because it just, that part of the brain is, like, slower. Or even, like, just the raw, like, transfer of intent energy that it might be, like, getting is slowed down. So, like, it's, like, a couple seconds behind when it would have first happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, at the current stage, right, you have one tag that would benefit it, and it has effectively one tag that counters it. So they would be kind of equal force as it currently stands.
Yeah, I would just need more aspect of, like, what it can do tag-wise.
Yeah, but that's also a good part of the system, right? Where just because you have an ability that sounds really strong, right, the number of tags is still relevant, and creatures might have at least some tags that can counteract it. So your ability is good, but because a creature might have an ability, like this guy, for instance, definitely might have an ability to counteract it in some small degree. But the shadow salamanders, the fear-eating salamanders that you fought before, they probably wouldn't have. They probably would have been a lot more like messed up by this perception and by this like time alteration thing.
It's because the fun of having multiple creatures, because if I have like, oh, this creature is just like, I can't fuck with its perception as easy. Well, what if I just move way faster or make it move slower? And that's where Judas Priest comes in, of the physically actually altering the rate of time.
Yeah.
Like, instead of just like the perception of it.
And it didn't come up this last session, but I noticed that you guys were only using like one creature at a time, and there are mechanics for you guys to use both your creatures at the same time. It just depends on what actions, like declaratively, what actions do you do, right? Like, for instance, if you told Lateralis mess with their sense of time as a command, in that action, right, you couldn't also tell Judas Priest what to do given the amount of time. You know, combat's happening, you can only use your mouth effectively at one time, but in the next action, for instance, Lateralis can keep doing that effect. He just won't get the benefit of your direction in doing so, somewhat weakening his tags in doing so, but then you can command Judas Priest to do other types of actions. And being a tamer, being a good tamer, is all about how do you delegate your time when it comes to combat. What are you telling your creatures to do versus not what not to do? Some creatures you just have as a designated protector for yourself against like creature attacks, right? Where it doesn't need to be commanded, it's just going to use whatever tags it can to protect you from certain effects. You might make certain commands or certain combinations where you tell your creatures, you know, we practice this particular combination, right? So now both creatures can contribute to a singular action because you've predetermined a combination technique for them both to use. It's all about just like delegating time. Like I said, like it seems super weird, but once you guys start doing it more, it's gonna be less like Power World or Pokemon where you just gotta throw one guy out and do stuff with them, you know, like one at a time, and you start like actually using your creatures in concert and combination, that the combats are gonna get even crazier and more fun.
Oh yeah, it's something to learn as we go, because especially I think that was the first fight I've had with Lateralis.
Yeah, it was.
And so like and then I knew that it was it essentially, with how actions worked, is like one directed action for each creature. And like probably as we're doing it, I do agree. I don't think the time perception will help too much in this fight, or at least it's
This current
easily
fight,
countered
yeah.
out. But like another fight, I want to try and mess with it and learn it to see how we can actually mess with that.
Yeah, for sure. And to be fair, this is literally the first fight everyone has actively had where they could use both creatures. Because the last fight that you guys did was during the class like duo fights, and you could only use one creature in that. So
yeah,
and it makes sense. It makes sense that you guys aren't good at this thing yet because you haven't done it before. You haven't really done so. And in the heat of combat, when everything's going on, you know, in the time it takes you to direct your creature to do a specific thing, whatever happens, and you don't have time to like simultaneously send another creature out to do a thing unless you've already like planned it ahead of time, or the creature has a job that you specifically designated for it to do. And it'll get harder and harder. It's one of the reasons why the beast duels, especially the 5-on-5s at the top level, are so crazy, because it's just a war between two people and all their beasts, and just a lot of different things are happening at once.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something I'm looking forward to. Damn, we talked about Legend of the Mist so much again. It's just, I don't know. What can I say? I think there has to be something said for a game that I can be like, I can play this style of game in it that I can't play with any other TTRPG. Like, beast taming, best beast taming game I've ever seen. You know, Lore of the Mysteries. As it stands currently, I can only see Lore of the Mysteries being played with the Mist engine. JoJo's. We talked about JoJo's a little bit before, about doing the same kind of thing, right? JoJo's can only work in the Mist engine. It can't really work in anything else that I currently know.
It's that, or it's literally this, or you have to create your own type of game that is just for JoJo. And there's a community project. It's currently, I think, in development, but they have a bunch of Google Docs out, and like the game seems cool and interesting enough. It's just going in a different direction instead of like trying to be a very crunchy JoJo experience, like explicitly mechanically crunchy JoJo. There are certain hallmarks I see where I'm like, I don't know how necessary a lot of these are, but I like the ideas. And it opens the problems of it's crunchy until it isn't.
Right.
And I think it just depends on, do you want the raw tabletop gameplay of dice rolling and how you make your character and how your characters progress? Because there's one thing I will say, that game does really, really well for the JoJo specific system, is I like how fate in like character development is a resource. So you can actively do the JoJo thing of being backed into a corner and your stand has a new power. Either it's like a literal one-off gimmick attack that barely ever can work again, or you can have like an actual proper evolution through like a character arc. I think making those mechanical expressions is really good, because Legend of Mist can do that to the same extent of how Improve and like adding new tags work.
Yeah. But
I think the way it is gamifying leveling up your stuff is really interesting.
Yeah.
And like to that I really like.
And
but other than that, it's just some parts are crunchy and confusing, I think, for the sake of it, and I don't think it needs that.
Yeah. And to be fair, I'm unfaithful when it comes to TTRPGs.
Same.
So if another game comes out that does a lot of the things I love but better than the Mist engine, that's gonna be my new favorite, hands down. And I genuinely think now, especially for more particular properties, like if I was to run Lore of the Mysteries, I'm probably going to do something similar to what I've done to the Beast Tamers game, where I'm going to change up mechanically how some of the systems work in the Mist engine to make it make sense, like replacing promise with digestion. So the act of digesting your potion is a more narrative, like mechanical part of the game, rather than a, how it currently works, which we've actually been doing wrong in a lot of our games. Not for the Beast Tamer game, because I'm going to maintain how it works for the Beast Tamer game, but how Promise is supposed to work in Legend in the Mist is when you improve another theme, you can choose to instead add a point of promise rather than an improvement. Rather than getting an improvement and adding a point of promise, which is what we've been doing in the Beast Tamer game. But for the Beast Tamer game, I think it really works well for the pacing for how you improve your beasts.
Yeah, and then because then anything else is just with how there's items to utilize it can speed it up. Because the only other bit I can see where it'll be, I'm really curious once we start getting more beasts, how, if anything, will change for pacing. Because I'm like leveling up 2 creatures. Oh man, I need so much like promise and tag pushing. Which is then you can offset it by items, and the better you are, I imagine you have more access to the shit to do it.
Well, yeah, or the more adventures you go on to places like you're currently at, where you're getting a bunch of spirit crystals.
Yeah, because I also think a way to get around it too is like, I imagine this setting, it would make sense if there are just higher quality crystals too, or like higher quality materials.
Yes.
That give you more than one promise.
Yeah, you will find those in this dungeon if you guys go far enough.
Yeah, it is literally that, because like it is something I've been curious about as we play, is how good it'll feel to have multiple creatures because of how promise works. But like each way is like, it is super easy to address. If there is a problem, I feel like it's addressed with no friction, because like the quickest solution if you want to put it on a faster pace is make it so when a promise triggers, you can add a tag to all creatures. And like that's if you wanted to do like expedited leveling, I feel. But if you want it in like faster scaling, or you can keep it in a slower, like bit paced out mode by doing it like this.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I've already accounted for this in some ways. For instance, the creatures that you recently just got at this at your C rank they start with 1 additional tag from a starter creature, and the next creature you'll get will have an additional on top of that, so 2 additional from a starter creature. So they already come with a couple extra tags to kind of make up for some of that time. And when you guys get to B rank, you will be able to tame even adventure level creatures, so they have the higher level of might starting out. So though that'll be after you get at least 1 creature trained up to adventure rank, but most of you guys are getting pretty close to that anyway. So I've already adjusted for it, and it's kind of a point in the system where the more creatures you get, the harder and the more materials you're going to need, and it's more encumbersome. That's by design, because that's what normal trainers have to go through. A trainer can't just sit around and like work really hard and train all those creatures up and get to the end tiers that easily. Like, if you want to be an actually good tamer, you need to go out and get resources, or you need to find some way to get a bunch of money to buy resources, or sponsored to get more resources, so that you can level up all your creatures. Because like, especially amongst duelists, if you have creatures on your team that are like not up to snuff, you're gonna get stomped in tournaments. So
oh yeah, like it's an observation I had, but already assumed there was a baked in method of addressing it. It's one of those fun things you can catch in a tabletop game, especially as it's like working, where you look at it and you're like, this could be a problem. How easy would it be, if it is, to like implement fixes? And you can come up with like multiple that like, oh, okay, this is just, it's the thing of, if it becomes an issue, this can be codified. Or even like, I like pointing out this idea only because it's an aspect I really enjoy when tabletops do, is laying out for people like, all right, what experience do you want, being able to adjust some aspects of the game based on like the table. Because like you could just call the way of if someone's like, I just want to play an expedited thing, want to have like the power fantasy of have my full Pokemon team, you could just have an XP share mode that is like, if you earn a promise, like full promises, and you can add a tag to a creature, you add to all creatures. Because like all that in my head does is it speeds up leveling rather than like I think break the system. So like that'd be a thing for a much shorter like campaign. Like that would be an
Sure.
idea that works as that. I don't think it's suited for long games at all. Like I don't think it's something we should shift to in how we're playing.
Right.
It's the same way of like, do you want to level up through like the nitty gritty, we're counting the numbers XP, or do you want to have milestone in like a little expedited XP game? Like it's the same question that a person rolling up to the table could pick. So it's the when you're reading a rule and you're reading how it works, and then there's a little text box on the right side that's like, or you could do it like this if you want this experience, but this is optional, and here's situations where you shouldn't. Which is just, if you want a long game, I don't think it works.
I mean, I only think it's long game versus short game, as much as the reason why it doesn't work that way, right, is because there has to be a fundamental difference, right, between a low-level tamer and a high-level tamer. And it can't just be rate of growth is the same from bottom to top, because that is... Then you're going to get the Pathfinder experience sometimes where all levels have the same amount of XP, right? And because a lot of like modules and everything like that give you at level challenges, you level the same rate from 1 to 20 in a lot of ways. Which means it makes you feel like in the setting, why aren't more people this strong? You know, why aren't more people at level 10 or at level 15? You know, where in this setting, because it's so much effort to raise multiple creatures, each rank of tamer you get takes effectively another multiple more of time, you know, like twice as long, or 50% longer at the next one, and so on and forth, like 50% more time to get to the next higher rank, because it's just, you have more creatures you're working with, you're taming more creatures, and you're trying to get them strong enough to develop your spirit well to tame creatures. So that's the reason why it's set up the way it is, and why I wouldn't recommend someone change it. But, you know, I also agree that free will is a thing, and players can cheat the system however they want if that increases their enjoyment.
The reason I only use that distinction of short and long campaign is like because I agree with your point about how the leveling should operate and like the pace it should work with the setting. That I agree with it, and I would only ever say it's good for a short game where people just want to have like almost like if you're testing out a system and you just want to like, all right, let's make it so we can get the fun extra shit a little faster, so then we can like get a full vibe of what we want to play for like a longer game. And because it's a shorter campaign, the problem is lessened because like the campaign will end before the bloat and the problems with that leveling style start to show their face. And it's just like, this is an expedited little experience thing. Do not do this for long games. It introduces more problems than it solves. This is not a fix. It is like an optional mechanic. Use at your own risk. To that extent, that's where I think it could work out for like a fun way to test and like do a short game. Because in the long game, I don't want us to ever shift to that at all, because I think it would fuck up, exactly as you say, I think it would fuck up more things than it would improve.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, it's mostly from a narrative and setting perspective than it is anything else. And that depends on how much you care about the setting, right? Like, I've seen people do worse things in D&D to the Faerun setting, so...
True.
You know, like, I wanted to say why I set it up the way it is, so, because in reality, right, nothing is slowed down, you're still gaining tags at a relatively the same rate. It's just now you have more things to worry about where you're putting those tags into. So it's not like it slows down. It just doesn't speed up to match the quantity of things you have to worry about.
I think it makes it so there's more incentive to go do things, and like it changes the incentives on how to operate your character to the idea of if you have a big group leveling XP share mechanic. One, it incentivizes you to have more creatures at the same time. And then it incentivizes you to, like you just level, you can keep playing at the pace you are because you don't have that like pressure of I need this to put here, this to put here. But then on the actual leveling track, it gives you the same pressures as you would if you lived in the setting. Yeah. Which are like, you just have way more shit you got to worry about and deal with. So like that's the line there. Which is, again, like, the more immersed you're trying to get into the game, the more I say to lean on how we already have the XP set up.
Yeah,
so I think it's well done.
And it also like motivates you to actually like explore, like you guys are currently doing. And that's again a part of the design, right? Is if you can't just sit in school and just grind out XP and get crazy strong. Like eventually school is going to feel like a bad way to spend your time because you could be doing more. And
yeah, exactly. It's a leveling mechanic. If you want to tell like a linear, shorter campaign, that like it would offset some of that of like the XP system encouraging essentially like plot deviations, or the GM has to like weave it in a way that's just like, let's have this kind of sort of be on an expedited milestone ass track. So then people are progressing pretty well, have the cool stuff, but then it's just like not the thing to repeat or even like keep doing as like the game goes on, because the fun of it is the fact that mechanically it's expressing the narrative of the setting. And like that's the part that's fun, because a lot of it feels logically set up the way it is, and then we have the exact same issues. Like, man, I really need money. I need to like get rich in this world fast. Yeah, I gotta figure out a way to do it, because I'm gonna have it worse off because I have angels and time, so I need like much more expensive shit. So like that's gonna be a hard focus for me in the future.
I guess angels are just like somewhat common in the Tensura region. It's one of the most common creatures we rolled up randomly in the region so far, which is very
I'll take it. Just not in the school.
Yeah, not in the school. But I want to leave off with one more thing before we go on as well. If you wanted to expedite Beast Tamers, so those who are interested, our Beast Tamers, by the way, live on the live tab of the channel. We've been playing for 9 sessions now, and we'll be going on to 10 next week. There is a quintessence in the game called Diligent Dredge. What it does is, rather than 3 improvements to gain 1, or 3 improves to gain 1 improvement, new tag, whatever, you need 5 improvements, but you gain 2 when you do so. So in Beast Tamers, you could have that where whenever you do your 5 improves for a particular theme, you would gain 2 promise along with the 2 new tags. So it expedites somewhat what your progression is, and as well, each of your categories are also being expedited by like 33% or whatever, or less than that, 18% faster, and that would expedite it, but not like make it crazy fast. But anyway, that's gonna be it for us. Didn't mean to talk about Legend of It so long ago. What can I say? I genuinely think like half the games I think are unique to how Legend of the Mist runs, I don't think could be run in like Daggerheart Drawsteel in a similar enough fashion to get, for me, the same level of enjoyment. People have been making like Pokemon, Digimon style D&D like games forever now. I don't think that's going to stop anyone from doing the same in Drawsteel or Daggerheart, but fundamentally I feel like the experience is just better in the Mist engine. But yeah, I guess anything you want to leave us off with, Alex, before we head out today?
Yeah, if you're a big fan of lore content, that's my wheelhouse, largely World of Darkness. Go sub to my channel, Blue Boy. I put out a video recently of Demon the Fallen. It's a very fun one. I'm happy with it. But yeah, go sub, go check out my shit. I got more stuff incoming.
As for me, I'm not making any promises on when content is coming out. I do want to make content. It's been on my mind all the time. I'm just a full-time dad, and so, you know, what free time I do have, I want to de-stress so that I don't convert my stress to treating my daughter any worse, you know, or not any worse, but worse than I can with just like being as stress-free as possible, you know. Like, she means the world to me, and I'm trying to be a good dad. But I know by the end of this year things will get easier, and we'll have a schedule where she goes and see grandma at least like once a week or twice a week, and that'll give me days to work on content, and then I'll be able to, in some way, not as much as I used to back in the day because I had a full week to do whatever. I'll be getting some content out, and I'm really looking forward to that. But my mom has to finish moving. She's moving a house she's lived in for nearly 20 years, and she's moving 4 hours away from where she used to live. So it takes a lot of time and a big process, but we're trying to get it done by the end of the year. And so around that time, hopefully things will be better. But
yeah,
with that, I guess we'll go ahead and say goodbye.
See ya.
Bye.